At the Villa Verena, on the shores of Lake Como, the rooms that Fornasetti designed are preserved exactly as he left them, virtually a memorial to the man for whom decoration was a lifetime's obsession.
What he was deeply concerned with was the decoration of surfaces, the decoration of objects that we used in our daily life.
It is this kind of mixture of classicism and irony. And the way that, for example, the Palladian building has come down to the scale of a chest of drawers, this is where there is a twist. It's the twist of humor that he's putting in everything.
I really think that it was such an incredible and fascinating world. It's like fairy tales. He was really ready to fill the world of fantasy and imagery. It is an ideal response for a person who lives on visions and dreams of images translated into stories.
But like dreams and fables, his fantastical images had a logic of their own, which Fornasetti's friend, the poet Pablo Neruda, called pure and precise magic.
He was very literate in terms of the history of design. He had a wonderful library. He had pattern books, volumes of engravings. He was a picker from the history of engraved ornament in particular.
He collected as he designed, repeating his favorite themes over and over. And his study in Milan is full of his obsessions as a collector. He was happy to plunder the past for images and ideas, although the sources he drew on were not only historical.
Fornasetti was very much influenced by the surrealist-oriented metaphysical paintings. So we're talking about people like Alberto Savigno, who was actually de Chirico's brother, but changed his name, de Chirico himself. Fornasetti very much comes out of this milieu. He's deeply rooted in the art of the teens, 20s, and 30s in Italy. And indeed, if you look at his drawing style, one can see the influence of Cocteau and Picasso.
He always saw himself as an artist, but what brought him acclaim was his talent as a designer. In the post-war years, he collaborated with the architect Gio Ponti, editor of Domus, and one of the most influential figures in Italian design. It was a collaboration that was to bring him international recognition.
There was a moment of obsession. They were similar in this idea of collecting, of excess, of over-decoration, over-complication. At that time, Fornasetti discovered a way of printing, which was not to add decoration as a contour of the profiles of a form, but rather the decoration printed as if it was projected on the surface of the piece, totally covering it and making it somehow disappear.
Playing with surfaces and unlikely perspectives was a game that he never tired of, and he continued to use Ponti's blank forms as surfaces for his fantastic invention. But he refused to recognize any particular influence but the great artistic traditions of Italy.
Fornasetti is, like many of his fellow Italians, a fiercely Italian designer. And it's actually very difficult to conceive of a Fornasetti-like designer coming out of any other country but Italy.
This kind of combination between classical Renaissance and irony and humor, I think this is definitely something which made him an Italian more than anything else.
At the basis of all of Fornasetti's work, the basis of all his decorations, is his talent as a draftsman and as a printer. And if you look at this cabinet, and if you look at the plates, and if you look at almost anything, they're all based on drawings. You think of the theme and variation plates. Well, those are not actually taken from any kind of print. They're drawn and dotted to look like engravings.
La donna mobile, qual più al vento, sul suo battento di pensiero. Sempre una babilella da suo viso, il più alto il riso, messaggero. La donna mobile, qual più al vento,
He reveled in success, and by the late 50s he was at the peak of his popularity. But it couldn't last. A new sensibility in design signaled an end to the passion for decoration, and a crisis in Fornasetti's career.
The specific modernist prohibitions were against ornament, historical or naturalistic reference, and non-functional form. Those are the very things that Fornasetti was interested in. He was interested in decorations that had nothing to do with function. That sort of decoration was okay on the tabletop. But things like the furniture by the 60s would not have been, and so his fortunes declined.
He stubbornly refused to adapt his style to changing fashion, maintaining that he was the right man for the wrong time. Sure enough, as Fornasetti stood still, fashion came round to meet him again, almost 20 years later, and his work found a new market.
You can feel the changing trends through Fornasetti's work and through what is selling. For example, at the beginning of the 1980s, with this kind of very minimalist look, where Fornasetti, because it is so structural, like, for example, the screen with the ladder, it is absolutely pure and quite simple in a way. So it fitted perfectly in this kind of environment. But now with the neo-Baroque coming back, then you have to go to another drawer of Fornasetti's work and take something else out.
With the revival of his fortunes, production resumed in the Milan workshop next to his home. Today it continues with the same attention to craftsmanship and detail. Still using the original Fornasetti drawings, every object is an example of Fornasetti's thoroughly contemporary idea that if a piece is good, it cannot lose anything by being produced a million times.
There is not really the pretentiousness. And this is what is great. It is going against the rules. It is breaking the classicism. It is using classicism to send up the classics. A very elegant behavior of a gentleman who is having fun all the time. A natural, postmodern person.
With all the shifts in fashion, it seems fitting that Fornasetti should have the last word. At the end of his life, the fantastic world of his imagination was once again celebrated, and the card announcing his death in 1988 read simply, "Ma la mia fantasia è ancora qui, but my fantasy is always with you."